I'm a co-founder, deputy director here at the Stanford Future Digital Currency Initiative. I've been in the blockchain space personally for about 5 years now, having launched products at PayPal, where I was the global head of blockchain strategy. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know Yifan He, our guest tonight, who is the CEO of Red Day Technology. And I'll just briefly introduce Yifan and BSN. Broadly speaking, Red Day Technology is a cutting-edge blockchain firm, really is leading some of the most interesting and rapid developments across all of blockchain in China. It is the kind of technology hub behind the blockchain service network. And it really is creating one of the most innovative and interesting blockchain ecosystems across the globe that's designed to basically tackle the high cost of transaction, develop dApps that will lead to critical innovations across the whole ecosystem, and really is proving that blockchain is not tied to cryptocurrency, and that the promise and potential of blockchain can be really democratic and divorced from some of the less than ideal economic incentives that have frankly led to, I think, a lot of rampant speculation. And so BSN to date is really engaged with a number of critical partners and countries, taking leadership role across mainland China and her territories, and is proving that a public chain that is non-currency based isn't just possible, but is having significant advantages over a lot of the public chains that are tied to the kind of cryptocurrency model. We're going to begin tonight with a short interview that I'll conduct with Yifan to better understand Web3 and his vision for interoperability. We'll take a few points to talk about BSN and where it came from. And I think we really like to get into the meat of the conversation as we go on to figure out how to best handle interoperability. So we'll dive in here and we'll kind of go from there. But just to get it started, Yifan, it's a pleasure to speak again. Hopefully my intro has given you justice to the work you've done in the space. I'd love to kind of talk about your vision for blockchain. Maybe start with, how did you first get into blockchain and come to this space?
Okay. Actually, the first time we really dive into what's blockchain technology, it's actually 3 years ago, probably 6 months before we put the BSN, project together. So, the difference is when I take a look at the blockchain technology, actually I see a new way to communicate data. When you ask people question, what's the most important technology in blockchain? People always say it's consensus or something like that, or smart contract, stuff like that. So, but I think the most important, it's a new way to communicate data. It's a broadcasting way to communicate data. So because on the internet, it's always the data transmission is always between two IT systems. Okay, always it move from one to another one. So but the blockchain changed that. So a build a technology that make multiple IT systems, even unlimited IT systems, to join a virtual broadcasting network. So to very efficiently to transmit data. That's how actually for public chains so easy to reach consensus. So the communication is still the key. So then we figured, eventually there will be some kind of very common protocol like HTTP, right? So it will enable, not just public chain, just blockchain. It's a regular IT system to join to build this kind of, broadcasting communication network very freely. I mean, the developer should input, to code like one line. Like today, HTTP, IP address, then you connect to another system. So eventually it's also a protocol with IP address, with a certificate, then you can join any kind of, this kind of broadcasting network. So that's actually how we understand the blockchain technology. So we think the consensus, the smart contract, the virtual machine, everything is built on top of this kind of communication, technology, then as an application. So why? And it's for blockchain, it's actually a very specific application. It's based on the consensus, right? But for communication, sometimes we don't need consensus. We just need communication. Sometimes I call someone, we don't need to reach an agreement. I just yell at him, we just argue. So communication is much more broad. So that's why it's blockchain is already an application level system. So how we can make this kind of much more efficient communication protocol than HTTP, okay, to all the IT systems in the world, and make that as simple as one line coding. It should enable that. So that's actually the original vision we have, and the reason why we even put the BSN project together. So that's it. That's how we say the blockchain technology. So actually, what we are doing is not really blockchain technology. What we doing is really a communication technology or cloud technology. So we just inside our environment, we integrate all the blockchain technology and the blockchain frameworks. So it's a little bit like a cloud. We still consider BSN as a specialized cloud services environment. Okay, it's like you go to AWS, right? You go to AWS, you can initialize any virtual machines, and you can choose to run any kind of operating system, right? Linux, even Windows. Okay, on BSN is same thing. Choose a cloud and choose a framework, then click a button. Then we bring up the virtual machines and install that blockchain operating system into it, and you can access it, do whatever you want to do. So we actually consider BSN is a cloud services project, not really a blockchain project. So
it's interesting to talk about that. And I think that's a critical conversation. A lot of the colleagues here at Stanford, we talk about interoperability as basically communication. It's how do these networks speak to each other? And yes, there's a lot of segmentation. People, I think, are talking about, well, if BSN is building phenomenal infrastructure in mainland China, how does that communicate, with systems, say, in Europe or the United States? Before we get to some of the technical breakdown and like how that works, I'd be curious to think about from a company perspective, what are some of the values that you think underpin BSN, and what do those values speak to this communication? What motivates you and your team to really kind of be stellar and build this out? And what's that kind of long-term vision and mission for BSN 5-10 years out?
Yeah, when you talk about the communications, then interoperability becomes the very first thing you need to consider. Interoperability is so important. It's also very, very difficult. For our human beings, we haven't even 20 years into the 21st century, we have not solved the language interoperability. Okay, most people couldn't talk to another human being from another language system. Yeah. We still haven't solved the interoperability, the basic one. So you see how difficult it is. So also so many IT systems we know today actually is solving some kind of interoperabilities, like Swift. Why we need a Swift? Right. Because all the commercial banks, they have different account systems and they have different internal process. Then how you can let all those commercial banks talk to each other with their own account system? You need something like Swift, to make them interoperable. So many IT systems in the world today is solving the interoperability issue. Internet is the great infrastructure to solve that. What's internet? It's actually build a common protocol like a TCP/IP protocol or HTTP protocol. So all the IT systems, no matter what kind of system are you using, what kind of hardware you are using, you can use a common protocol to communicate with each other. So that's it. That's the interoperability. Entire internet is for interoperability of all the IT systems in the world. So same thing for all the blockchain today. Each chain has their own account system. Okay, have their own technical structure, architecture. So how can they talk to each other. So there's only so many, methods. The first one, like Swift, you need to build some kind of, messaging network to basically make them talk to each other. It's like most interoperability protocol today. They use a relayer, they use a chain to handle the transmission. It's like Swift. Another way is like internet. Everybody uses the same, communication protocol. So everybody use gossip or lab P2P, same communication protocol. Then they can communicate with each other much easier. So there's just so many ways to do. Okay, all like language. We all learn a common language, so we can use this common language to communicate. So just so many ways. So that's why we build the BSN is actually we want to try all of them. One way is we also build the actually we call the interchain hub. Right. So we use a bridge to bridge different chains. So for to answer a question, how we handle this from China, to connect, because blockchain, we can just put one public chain nodes into BSN. Then we can actually connect to public chain data with permissioned chain data. Okay, so it's nature of blockchains. So also we are also developing on BSN some kind of common protocol. Okay, something like HTTP. We are working with Hyperledger, Linux Foundation, so trying to set up a project, open source project. So we want to develop a common protocol you can install into any web server, then enable all its SDK. So enable any IT system to actually connect to other IT systems to form some kind of chain. But there's no consensus. There's no smart contract virtual machine. So it's just for communication. So that's the second method we're trying to build. Okay, then if eventually so many chains can adopting this common protocol, then it's much easier for them to communicate with each other. So BSN is actually it's a testing project. Try to build the most efficient interoperability technology for blockchains for this kind of different broadcasting network. How they can.
I mean, it's an elegant metaphor of the bridge. I mean, it seems like if BSN is building effectively this purpose-built experimental sandbox, and yes, people can bridge to this sandbox from wherever they might be, and that way there's a common vernacular, there's a common vocabulary. It's a powerful thing, and I think David Mazieres, who's our faculty director here at Stanford, he always talks about interoperability as the critical point. And Yifan, to your point, and just as we'll dive into this with the Q&A from the audience, but from the perspective of Stanford, we're in this unique spot where this is all terra nova. This is all new. This is all kind of very exciting. And it's also it's nerve-wracking, and it can be a big challenge because we're at a point right now in the development cycle of blockchain where the design primitives and the collective architecture is yet to be decided. And no one knows if it's going to be, proof of stake or proof of work, or even the other types of consensus mechanisms beyond that. It's still all being decided. But what we do know, and I think this is why we're talking here today, is whatever systems, and I think it'll be plural systems, I think there'll be multiple winners in this space. There needs to be a common vocabulary that people can build on top of with this interoperability layer. And without that, it becomes a very, very dangerous thing where if it's blockchain, if it's not, the consensus mechanisms and the promise of the technology, I think definitely falls by the wayside. Let's dive a little bit deeper into BSN. I know over the course of the past quarter, you've had a developer portal that came online in September of this year. How does that impact the work of tying together a number of these protocols with the SDK? How is that progressing, and how do you think that will impact your roadmap and your development over the course of the next couple of quarters?
Yeah, firstly, it's I still want to say it's BSN. It's a very, very long-term project. Okay, we don't want to rush. it's just like all the communication revolution. Okay, it takes time, just like the internet. I mean, back in 70s, 80s, there are so many people building internet with different protocol. It's just exactly like today's blockchain space. Each university building a small network. Okay, they think that's great. That's the best thing in the world. But they only communicate inside their own small network. Okay, then by end of 80s, people begin to realize if we can connect all the IT systems in the world, it becomes so powerful infrastructure for the human world. Then people begin to adopt the same, protocol. Then slowly they connect to each other. The blockchain industry will go through exactly the same process. Okay, no doubt about that. So, but I think they will. Each chain will keep their consensus. Okay, I don't think there will be one consensus will winning out. Each one will keep their own, and smart contract, virtual machine, they will keep their own because that shows the different how they can handle different requests, the business logic. But the communication part will be unified. Okay, slowly, because if you don't unify same communication, you cannot communicate with other chains. You are just like an internet. You are left out by the internet. So that's why it's for BSN. That's still we keep that vision, which means we are testing through different developers which communication or which way to set up this kind of interoperability is the best way. So, but because we are, a small Chinese company, we can do a lot of things in China, but outside China, there's much we can do. So one strategy we have is working with local partners in different countries to set up, we call that BSN portal. It's actually a little bit technical, pretty complicated. It's BSN is an infrastructure. We don't actually serve end user, which means we like underlying cloud infrastructure, but we don't have a portal. Okay, we hope people to build the blockchain as a services website based on BSN. So that's actually our strategy. So we don't touch end user data. So each portal have their own data, but we provide hundreds of APIs to those portals, and they call the API and basically access all the resources, all the blockchain technology. So they only need to manage their front end. So this way, actually, this is a strategy how we can expand quickly and get more developers to use BSN so we can understand what they need and how we can make their job easier, because only in China, the sample size is too small, right. and the IT system is too limited. So that's why we use this called the portal strategy. But we also give our local partner in different countries much low cost, very low cost way to run a blockchain services. So
maybe let's expand on that. I know that there's BSN and there's BSNI. And BSNI or Blockchain Service Network International. I know that's something that you've been working on for a long time to really kind of play to the global aspect of this potential project. Can you maybe kind of give insight to folks here today on how you see that developing, and maybe the role of interoperability between BSN, which is servicing mainland China, and BSNI, which is really designed to be a global portal for people to come in and leverage the technology?
Yeah, it's first BSN, just one BSN. Okay, it's like the internet. We just set up different virtual data centers and they connect to each other, then become BSN. So BSN is just one BSN network, but the BSN China and the BSN International is actually different governance. Okay, I mean, it's just like the internet. I mean, internet in different countries is regulated by different regulators. So, but they still regulate one single internet. So BSN China is manage everything related to BSN inside China, which means if you want to build a portal in China, if you want to build one virtual data center of BSN in China, you need to go through this BSN China, association. So they give you permissions, they give you the IP addresses, then you can connect to build the data center and connect to the BSN. But the BSN International is managed by a foundation in Singapore. Okay, so it's nothing to do with Chinese government, SOEs. So outside China, it's just like the Chinese regulators. They cannot regulate anything in the US. So it's actually managed by the FCC. So BSN International is managing all the BSN outside China. So if you want to set up a virtual data center, get the IP addresses, or build a portal to access BSN, actually you need to go through this BSN foundation. Okay, so just send in the application, get the IP addresses. It's just like the internet. You build a data center, you need IP addresses to connect to the internet. So.
I want to shift the conversation just slightly, and I'm only going to have another 5 to 7 minutes of questions. I want to use the balance of time to engage the audience, but it's been fascinating kind of hear your direction where BSN is going from a technical architecture and how it's being built out. Let me ask you, 5-10 years out, okay. We're in a world where blockchain is now ubiquitous, but I think to your point on communication. People don't really realize they're using blockchain. I think that's a good thing for the space as we develop this technology out. If BSN is successful and you have this layer that can allow communication across a number of systems, what are some of the impacts that you foresee this having on everyday life? It could be something as simple as somebody buying a cup of coffee at a store, or something as complex as a large-scale multinational transaction. In your opinion, what are the most important applications and impacts of this technology if we can get the interoperability layer correct?
Okay, so first, in 10 years, I think on internet there will be 2 layers. Okay, the internet will become 2 layers. One layer is the internet today. Okay, everything goes through a P2P kind of protocol. 60% of the traffic goes through HTTP protocol. They only connecting between 2 IT systems. But I think in 10 years there will be another layer. There will be another layer to handle all the broadcasting communications. And the internet will divide into 2 layers. And the second layer, it's a little bit like a regular phone calls or conference calls. With the conference call, it doesn't mean you don't need the regular phone calls. But the conference call make people's communication much efficient if they involve multiple IT systems. So that's why. So the result will be for so many IT processing process go through the second layer. If this process involve multiple, it's much efficient. The data can be reach you in seconds, not in 2 days. For example, the money transfer, right? The money transfer. So all the IT system, the purpose of all the IT system is the efficiency. Without IT system, we still can live, but then just not in the best, the most efficiency way. So that's the first thing. Second thing, this kind of decentralized way actually will also encourage a lot of systems make data much more privacy protected. Okay, so that's actually one thing. It's a lot of data will be much more transparent and also give people control of their own data. This actually blockchain technology, this new layer, actually one most important thing is make your data belong to yourself. Okay, you can use your own private key to manage your data in the bank, in the government system, in a lot of systems. So that's actually one thing of the second layer will do.
So just let me focus on this last comment on the individual ownership of data, and then we can go to some Q&A from the audience. But as we think about this concept of the self-sovereign individual, data has become a dramatically interesting spot the last 10, 15 years, more so than I think average individuals really have conceived it could be. We like to give the metaphor of, I'll use political philosophy as a metaphor. if internet in 1995 is brand new, it's the state of nature. There really are no rules. There's no regulation. Internet into basically the early 2000s to kind of where we are now. It's Web 2. It's this notion of digital feudalism. Large corporates, Facebook, Google, Amazon, whoever you want to kind of say is the boogeyman of the day, they've extracted tremendous value to the order of trillions of dollars and redistributed that from the individual to really shareholders. And we're now at this kind of cusp of Web3 where you could say it's a data enlightenment, where very much in the spirit of Montesquieu and Locke, a new social contract is being written between individuals and basically large corporate actors for the first time, really since the early 90s when there were no rules. People are in this unique position to control and own and monetize and determine their own fate, their own destiny. There's a poem by William Henley who talks about, I am still the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. It's that kind of conception of data. So I guess the question here to get your perspective is, do you think individuals are ready to kind of take that mantle of responsibility? And what can organizations like the BSN and others do to educate consumers as we enter this phase of basically data sovereignty, data self-sovereignty, and how will that impact all the kind of layer 2 and communication you've just described as people become more self-aware of that?
Yeah, it's it's so important. We get used to internet. So we get used to giving our data, personal data, to all those big websites, and we don't care about. You don't even know what they are doing with your data. So that's why I personally really think, with blockchain technology, with NFT technology, actually, 20 years later, when we look back, we say, okay, that was ancient time. We just gave our personal data to those websites and they store into a back-end centralized system, and there's no control over it. We will laugh, okay, to death. Okay, it's so ancient. So I just, how about this? I give you a very simple example how the blockchain technology can change the way how that data is managed. Okay, and we can realize that today if those government wants. Okay, let's use a very simple one. It's those kind of motor vehicle department. Okay, every single country has motor vehicle department, so it's much easier for people to understand. So right now, all the car data and the driver data is stored in a back-end centralized system. So if you want to sell your car or transfer your car, or you need to update your driver license, you need to go to motor vehicle department. Okay, go to the counter, prove yourself, and update the data. So how about right now, next year, if some countries' motor vehicle department build a decentralized system and create an NFT for each car. So when the car is still on the manufacturer, they create the NFT. So then the car begin to move. Okay, then, but this NFT have different set of data with controlled by different private keys. For example, the government control some data. Okay, only they can update. For example, who is the car maker? What's the engine, number? So you cannot change that. Okay, even for some countries, the car's color, you cannot change that. Okay, for example, in China. So those data still needed to be managed by the government. But the government can give the car owner a private key. They can create a private key and change a lot of other data, like the address, like the what's the mileage this car has, how many gas they filled, and all other data personal can control, even the car owner's name. Okay, because for the government, they don't need to know the name. They just know ID. And also there's another set of data can be controlled by the insurance company. So they can update all this car's entire life's insurance record into it. Only the insurance company can update that. And this whole data, this NFT is on a chain. It can be a permission. It's on the public chain. So which means it's kind of open. So then the car owner, the government, the insurance company, they can actually open some data to public, so people can search to get some. I mean, then this car actually no longer controlled only by the government. Some data is totally controlled by the private key of the car owner. And when this car is sold, transferred to another new owner, the new owner's private key takes that over. Okay, then update those data wherever they want to update. So just think about this. This will change the entire account system, account structure. Okay, let's say if Facebook put all their account system into this way. So your Facebook account actually is an NFT or a set of data, and you have private key to manage so many personal data inside that NFT or associated with that NFT. So Facebook doesn't even have access to it. But all the application on Facebook website still access this user account, and you give them permission. You give them permission. Can they access your data or not? Not Facebook give them permission. So this is actually in 10 years change almost every single IT system in the world. The public chain, the permission chain, the NFT technology. So this is what I call, the second layer on the internet will be specifically to manage all those things. So which means you need an operating system, you need a cloud system, you need a certificate management system, you need a development tools, you need so many things. I mean, there's whole industry out there. That's what actually BSN trying to do, build this environment, testing the environment to get so many partners into to build different components. So someone is building a privacy computing component on BSN to test that how that integrate with regular IT system. And we have public chain access, we have open permission chain, we have permission chain. We're testing all the chain type, which one is suited for what kind scenario, business scenario. For example, for so many regular IT system or regular business, they just cannot use public chain because the cloud cost is so high, it's meaningless. Unless their business income is cryptocurrency, then they can use public chain. But if their business income revenue is in fiat money, there's no way for them to use public chain because the cost is so high. It could be, next year, it could be 10 times higher than their income. So that's why we will need, inside this second layer on internet, there will be so many chain types existing for different business scenario, but all of them can talk to each other with one line code. So that's the goal. That's the entire goal for BSN.
It's a powerful vision, and one I think we share that at Stanford is incredibly important as we build these things out. I want to be mindful of time and go to the audience here. Is there anybody who would like to kind of ask a question? If you raise your hand, we can go ahead and call you. Does anybody have a question to start out with as we kind of talk to Yifan about interoperability in BSN? Well, I mean, as people are looking for questions, I'm definitely happy to kind of continue asking as people formulate those questions. But I would say, Yifan, as we think about how that future of NFTs plays into the space, what are some of the challenges that you foresee potentially from government or from enterprise, as these will be those quandaries that make this difficult to achieve?
There's so many difficulties. The number one is always political. Okay, this is, the BSN we are really doing something. We think it's trying to work with all the partners in the world to try to build something open source everybody can use to make all the IT system much easier to communicate. But the people always say BSN is political. It's from China. Chinese government is behind that. It's seeing all those things. We don't really worry about that. Okay, because we move forward, people will understand how transparent it is and how we will open source and make that much easier. So, and the second one is that people don't understand the technology. You know, it's just like in 1993, you explain internet to people. I mean, most people don't even have a computer, how they can even visualize what's the internet. I'd say it's really hard for them. So, but it's I think it's normal for a new type of technology coming out. So it's we actually every single day we explain what's blockchain, what's this broadcasting communication is to people. This probably will take another 10 years. so we accept that, and we just keep working on that. So that's a second most
it'll take time. I think we'll get there. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it's a matter of I think just sitting down and doing education and awareness. It'll just take time for people to get comfortable with the technology. I mean, the tech is so new. It is like 93, 94. People just don't really have a good understanding there. But let me go back to the audience. Anybody have a question they'd like to ask Yifan or maybe myself here at Stanford? We're happy to take them in turn. People are either really quiet or it's late night and people are super tired. Let's bring this back and talk about maybe some of the potential you see for BSN and this technology to be a catalyst for growth in emerging economies. As we think about where global economic trends are happening over the course of the next 10 to 15 years, huge amounts of development in sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. These are areas that have not had the benefit, I think, of the infrastructure that has powered both Europe, China, the United States. There's a clean slate to kind of try brand new things. As you think about what BSN is building and the potential in emerging markets, what excites you about that potential and to kind of maybe just have a clean start and how things can be built out?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. It's, I mean, we all work in IT, right? You definitely understand how hard to change existing system. I mean, some banks is still using system developed in the 70s. so it's really hard if you have well-built, it's already in use IT system, a very large one. It takes 20 years, 10 years to even update them. So that's why for those, for blockchain technology, actually it's much easier to penetrate the market for emerging markets because the IT is backwards, it's not that advanced. So it's much easier for them to see the benefits of the new technology. So that's why I think the emerging markets definitely will be first adopter of blockchain technology for the countries. What I mean is IT system, regular IT system, to really, not only cryptocurrency, it's the regular IT system to really use this kind of new communication or blockchain technology to update their process and say, advanced country will, always late. Okay, I mean this change is fundamental. Like I said, the Facebook example. I mean, how many years it will take them to change their user account system into that? I think probably needs 20 years. But if you're building a new website, right, it's very easy for you to adopt a new technology. So I still think even for China, for those kind of emerging markets, especially, those, it's a little bit advanced. Emerging markets, they will adopt a blockchain technology much easier than advanced country or developed country.
I do have a question based on the comment you just said. I think would be a very interesting tangent for us to go into, but I'm going to go back to the audience. If nobody has a question, I'm going to ask something about the metaverse, but just want to give the audience first dibs if there's any other questions. Well, I'm going to ask this metaverse question then. So, you mentioned kind of Facebook and how that's developing into its whole effort and how you could have accounts and data. Where do you see BSN fitting into the infrastructure for Metaverse? this is something that has been incredibly timely from Gemini and the exchange to Facebook to now Microsoft. All these companies are really taking a head-first approach in the metaverse. Where do you see BSN in the infrastructure and the communication layer fitting in there? Do you think this is an opportunity, a challenge? I'm just genuinely curious about your perspective on that.
Okay. First, I personally still don't understand what metaverse is. Okay, that's it's what I understand. It could be a gaming. It should be.
It could be anything. I think we're all in that same boat. I think we're all.
It's virtual reality. It's a virtual reality. It's the internet part of metaverse, internet. So it's really hard to say. And the metaverse is a word for applications. So it's the application layer, So that's why I believe metaverse will personal understand. I think the metaverse will be a virtual reality, gaming, and the digital assets. Okay, personally, I think those three is the top three aspects for the metaverse. So which means those applications will use almost all the technology. And the BSN, we only specialize handling blockchain, this kind of communication. So we are not really building, a very powerful cloud for the virtual reality kind of application to run on. That's not our specialty. What we do just focus on the handling this kind of broadcasting communication and the blockchain infrastructure. So if part of the metaverse, for example, the digital asset, okay, definitely will be based on NFT technology. So they can use that part can use BSN, but the other like gaming, that definitely is, nothing to do with BSN. Personally, I think in short term.
Understood. We'll see what happens there. I think this is going to be something that people might be super excited about, but it potentially is a way out. Let me do this. I think we're about at time, but I want to give Yifan an opportunity if there's a closing statement or anything you'd like to kind of leave. We have a question. Looks like we have a question from Ashira Stember. Ms. Stember, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Hi. Just thinking about onboarding of mainstream users, that just feels like a huge challenge. There's a lot of talk about just getting more people to understand what's going on. And just wondering, for those of us that are already believers in the technology, wondering what your thoughts are on what we could be doing to make it as easy as possible for others to understand the power of the technology and what it could be. Like, what are your thoughts on how we could better communicate that to bring more people into the fold?
Very good question. I mean, very, very good question. Actually, that's why we need to go beyond cryptocurrency. that's actually my answer. Is because cryptocurrency is so close to the environment. Okay, whatever application you build, you only, like I said, this application's income must be in cryptocurrency. Then that make you, everybody is build all their application with, relate to cryptocurrencies. That actually makes this very, very close ecosystem. The regular IT system cannot penetrate that. And they sometimes they want to try, but after try, they say, okay, this doesn't make sense for our model. So what I think is still need to make blockchain technology much broader, go beyond cryptocurrency, especially the economic model needed to go beyond cryptocurrency. I mean, cryptocurrency, it makes sense, okay, inside its own industry, but how we can leverage this to the mainstream technologies. That's why, actually one thing we are doing is get rid of the cryptocurrency, even get rid of the virtual machines, the smart contract, the consensus. We just focus on the communication. So that's why, like I said in the beginning, we try to develop some kind of open source protocol that regular IT system can use to build this kind of, broadcasting network. So once they build the network, they can do a lot of things related to blockchain. So this is how you move this new technology into mainstream. But if everything we do is just focus on the cryptocurrency, it will never go to mainstream. It will never. I personally think it will never go to mainstream.
Really, really good points there. Yifan, unless there's any other questions, Yifan, I'd love to give you a chance, kind of do a brief wrap up as we wrap up the hour here. Are there any kind of closing comments you'd like to offer about BSN interoperability? Anything you'd like to highlight and leave the audience with tonight?
Okay. I still want to emphasize is BSN is not a blockchain. Okay, everybody think BSN is a blockchain or public chain. It's a cloud environment. We actually building a cloud management software, so we can build a specialized space on any cloud, and this specialized space is much easier to handle blockchain applications and blockchain systems, which means within this virtual data center, when you deploy 100 different chains, private chain or public chain, the way they use resources, the way they manage their certificates, the way they handle security, it's much easier and much cheaper. Usually if you don't use this kind of BSN environment just on the regular cloud management platform, then you probably use 50% more virtual machines, which means 50% more cost. So that's why what we are doing is actually a cloud services, okay, but designed specifically for blockchain system and application. So that's people always think BSN is so, but if we enlarge BSN into almost all the clouds, all the data centers, all the then it become one more layer on internet. For people, for any IT system, connect to it. If you want to work with cryptocurrency, connect to public chains. If you want to build your own virtual network to just transmit data in a much more efficient way, do that by yourself. So we just give you the best environment. Here it is. So BSN will be open source. Okay, so everybody can build a data center. Everybody can build their access point. So that's a goal. So BSN will be open source, and those software can be freely used, just like web servers today.
Amazing. It's this super compelling and exciting stuff. Again, on behalf of Stanford University and Jonathan Padilla here, we'll be having a video recording of this posted, and additionally, on behalf of Stanford, we'll be posting a blog to summarize the main points here tonight. Just briefly, I want to again thank Yifan and Red Dayton BSN for being a phenomenal partner and being committed to some of the most important values in the blockchain space on interoperability, on open source technology, and really helping make this technology mainstream as we find ways for both geographic diverse communication and really building out great technology together. So Stanford, just briefly on the Future Digital Currency Initiative, we're super excited to announce we have a brand new executive director who's starting in January, and we'll be very aggressively building out a number of open source protocols like BSN, and with some of our existing membership that includes companies like Coinbase, FTX, among others. So stay tuned for Stanford, and we look forward to ongoing cooperation with the BSN, and we're super excited. So thanks, folks, for coming out this evening, and we'll be in touch shortly. Everybody have a phenomenal December. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, JP.